Reporting. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. One of the not so easy topics sometimes with DegreeWorks. We talked about the tables yesterday, and there's just an abundance of data that you can glean from these DegreeWorks tables. But unfortunately, you get to it in several different ways. None of them seem to be the same methodology. So hang on today. Stop me if you're confused, or if I confuse you or don't make sense on something, because some of this can get a little bit complicated. Now, I don't know if you guys use any kind of report writer like Argos or Cognos or anything like that. It doesn't really matter. What I'm going to be talking about is just strictly out of the DegreeWorks tables. And so if and I'll throw out some code, some SQL code, and but you can turn that into Cognos or Argos or whatever you want. If possible, I'd like to see if any of you or all of you that have access to SQL Developer or Toad or whatever, to hop into it so you can kind of follow along as we go through these tables. And the SQL that I'll be presenting is very simple. I can promise you that each one of you is probably a better SQL writer than I am, but I just want to kind of give you the format of the tables, how you get data out of them, and what are some of the data items that are in there that I think are important that you could get. So if you get a chance to log in and either get into some kind of SQL developer, if you can log into the admin server, remember there's that link, there's that script called DB, whoops, and let's see.
Oh, that's on the app server. When you get to the.
Am I on the wrong?
Yeah.
I'm on the
It's V5DB. I mean, okay. V5DW.
Dang it. Okay.
It's a server.
So you think it's this one? This one? That's it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Okay. And that is. I have to redo my colors. I thought yesterday I was on the. No, I need to be on the. Yeah, no, I need to be on this one. Yeah, sudo. Oh, okay. Wait. Okay. And I just have to do that. Okay. Let's close this one out, and let's make this one bigger. Okay, so if you're on here, you can use the DB command, and it'll put you in there. That's the way I'll do it. You probably have access to SQL Developer or Toad or something that's much easier to use. I know I saw Jeff using it some this morning and yesterday, so probably be switching over to you guys and letting you run some of these things instead of just letting me do it all. Okay, so there's different types of tables, and we mentioned a couple of these yesterday, but we're going to dig deeper into these. The first one being DAP audit detail, which is a summary of the audit. If you recall from yesterday, that's the one there. It's a cube. There's actually some good data that can come from here. It is summary data, so we can't dig real deep into it, but it is sometimes that's all you need is data out of there. The CPA tables are a little bit different beast. They're generated. You saw that CFG 020 results yesterday that I showed you. And we're going to do some playing around with that, turn some things off and on, run some folks through there and see what it looks like. I mentioned RAD tables yesterday. RAD tables are really the only reason I mention those there today is it's a good way to pull in a student's personal information like name, email address, that type of thing. Then really the third set of tables that we'll be spending time on besides DAP audit detail and CPA tables are the SEP tables. And so since Matthew said you guys had already had some reporting out of the old plans tables, I want to show you these new tables, and you'll have to convert your reports to access these new tables. I really won't show you much on exceptions and notes. They're just additional tables out there. Okay, DAP audit detail. So as I said yesterday, every time you run a new audit, every time you press that process new, or every time the what program is run, a DAP audit detail record gets created. DAP 22, remember that one's on the test. Every time a DAP 22 is run, a new record in DAP audit detail gets created. And then, and there is some data in DAP audit detail that we can get some information from. Percent completion is a good one. Overall GPA for a block is a good one, and when the audit was run and whether the audit is frozen. That's all data that can come out of DAP audit detail. I've got a little SQL file here of samples. So let's see. Let's run. I'll tell you what, let's take a look at the file structure first. So I'm just going to describe DAP audit detail, and I'd recommend you guys do the same thing. So in DAP audit detail, you have obviously the student IDs, then you have their school, degree, and student level. Those are, excuse me. So anytime a student has a new school, which I don't think you guys probably only have one school, but anytime they change their degree, you probably won't change their level. And then the fifth field is term, DAP term. And that represents the student's catalog year, incoming catalog year. Anytime one of those four fields, school, degree, level, or term, is changes, then a new queue is created, a new set of records is created for that student. So we have to take into account that. So what I usually do is look, so you could have multiple records out here for a student, and you will have multiple records since your queue is 2. So what I usually do is look for the max term or maybe the max date out of this field. In the PowerPoint, I have a little bit more about the field. So these are the 5 important things, and these determine how many queues that the student has out there. And remember, you're saving 2 per queue. Some other information that's good to get. Audit percent is the percent they're finished in the completion. Audit GPA is it's for the total block GPA, not for the individual blocks, but for the total, in your case, probably a degree or certificate block. Okay, we've already looked at this. This was an old slide, so we need to make this for IVC. Your value is 2. It's set to 2 actually. In CFG 020 DAP 14. So your value there is 2. Okay, and I think I went through this yesterday about, if you've got one out there, a student runs another one, they'll actually keep the value out there. This was if the queue was only 1, think of it. So the first one would go away. But then if they change their degree, a whole new queue gets started. So I think we've already talked that in enough detail. So here's a little summary of the table, of the fields in the table. So we've got obviously those 5 items we talked about. the time and date in which the audit was run, whether or not it was frozen. Um, well, let me mention audit type right here. Probably most of your audit types are going to be AA, standing for academic audit. I don't think you guys run a financial aid audit or anything like that. If you did, or an athletic audit, then you may have multiple types, but you probably only going to have one type. The freeze information. And Jeff, I don't know do you guys freeze any audits now? Do you know of that, or?
We do.
We do. Okay.
The evaluators.
At time of graduation, probably.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
The freeze.
So that's where that gets marked, and you have to account for that when you're running your reports. So then the good information is the percent complete and the GPA of the audit. Now the rest of the fields in this table, this odd block 1, value 1, percent 1, GPA 1, and then that's replicated 10 times. And so that's the individual blocks within the audit. So it could be the degree block and the major block and a concentration block. All those different blocks are what these values represent. Now, I like to just look at block 1, because block 1 is going to be the top level. Block 1 is going to be their degree block or their certificate or whatever that top level item is. That's what block 1 is. The rest of them you don't know. They may, it depends on how it was scribed. It may be a major, it may be a concentration, it may be an other or something like that. So I usually don't, if I'm going to need to report on those individual items, there's another way to do it. And I don't go through this table. And then we've got some other fields at the end. So let's just let's go out there and I'd welcome you to as well. Let's look at, and I'm gonna put, Melly, tell me your ID again.
704680.
G0076. Is that right? What was it again? 7.
Oh, you're
Oh,
muted.
you're on mute.
Oh, I thought I had muted, then I muted again. 704680.
704680. Okay, so I'm just going to select star, and it's not going to look too good, but let me take this out. In our database, we have to reference it by DW schema, but whenever I use a Toad on our system. So, and let's don't care about the freeze type right now. So what I'm going to do here is, actually, let's just do this. Let's select star from down audit detail, or down to ID equals 7. Let's just do it this way. So 4, 6, 8. Do something real quick. Okay, so you can see a bunch of junk. It looks better if you're in. Is anybody in SQL Developer right now? It'd probably be easier if we looked in there instead of using this, because we needed to limit everything.
Let me see.
And then we'll use yours. I usually do this demo on our system, and it shows you our data, but I'd really rather look at your own data. Let me stop my sharing. So if anybody has SQL Developer up.
Sure. Let's see.
this in the chat window.
So we're doing test. This one. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. What was it?
I've got it in the chat if you want to copy it in there.
ETL, was it?
DAPS 2 ID.
Zero, 4, 6, and 0.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So she's got quite a few records out there. Notice she's got, why don't you go ahead and add to that and just add order by DAP audit date. Okay.
the latest
Okay.
one.
So it looks like you got 2 degrees out there. Those were run, looks like we refreshed your audit here one day this week. All of your audit types, notice, are AA. So you guys are all on one school. Now you're, okay. So yeah, just go ahead and keep on going out to the right. Nothing is frozen yet. Your DAP audit percent is 61 and 79 for the 2 different degrees. Audit block, and your GPA is 3.67 for both of them. Audit block 1, which is typically the degree, is an AS and an AST. So for you, you've got to kind of think you've got 2 different records out here. You're in as 2 different things. Okay. And then the rest of the blocks, there may or may not be what we think they are. And so again, I usually just ignore everything else. If you will, move all the way out to the right, keep going. You'll get all the way out to block 10. Okay. All right. So here's their term, and that's the other important thing. So it looks like in 2020, you've got a different term. So maybe you changed your degree or something like that, Melanie. And that's
We've played with my account a lot, so I've had
and that's fine. So this is a good example. So we've got different terms out there. Remember those. It's important for those 5 fields: term, level, audit type, and degree. And
Yeah, so I think Melody was our primary CPOS tester.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, so we got ran through the ringer several times.
Yeah, we played with the reporting a little bit. If we go on Argos, we do have a couple of CPOS reports that I know we tapped into at least one of these tables. They were a nightmare.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes if you're freezing audits in CPOS, then you would see them in here. But it looks like none of your things are frozen yet. We'll talk about that DAP what here in a bit, but we'll leave that conversation for now, though. Okay, so I'm going to while you're pulling that up, I'm gonna take Melody, and I'm gonna log in and run another degree on you, and I'm just going to do a process new. Remember, a process new does the DAP 22. So give me just a second here, and move this over to a different screen. And your number is G00704 680. Okay. So, and you do have, okay, you have your valid degrees right now are AS-T and a certificate. So I did a process new on you. So hang on, it's still running. Okay, now run your select again.
Yeah, so
okay, so there you see that it's run again.
Yeah, so we have two
from today now. When I jump over to your certificate, I'm going to do a process new. And so that's a whole nother queue for you. So go ahead and run it again. So now you see that the certificate has, looks like you're getting two created at a time. I don't know if Melody, if you're pressing process new too, or
I didn't.
Okay, so it's funny. It's two are getting generated at the same time. I'm gonna freeze and audit now.
And it's not just because there's two different degree types, Cert and AST?
Yeah, and it may be running, it may be running every time I press process new, it's actually running both at the same time.
That's how I understood it.
Yeah, that is what's happening. So do it again now, Jeff.
Yes, now we have frozen.
Okay, so now we've frozen one, and that's basically out of the queue. So you still got a queue out there of two certificates, but this one's not in your queue anymore. So, so that's the DAP audit detail. So far, there's for all these that are out there, these old things out there, and you probably have. You may want to run a count real quick if you want to count everything in DAP audit detail. To see how many records. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
$49,000.
49,000. That's not too bad, but like for Melody, she's got some old ones out there. So if you wanted to remove those that are not tied to, like she doesn't have an AS degree anymore or an AA degree, those are just hanging out there. They're like those last four, and they're gonna stay out there forever. Unless you go in there and truncate them. So you could do some type of query to find out, if there's any DAP audit detail records out there that are no longer tied to a student's degree or level, and delete those because they're not used anything. The only ones you guys would probably not ever want to delete is anything that's been frozen. So if you guys are freezing stuff, then I would make sure, and whenever you do any of your truncate scripts, to take those out, to not use those. So one good piece of information that I actually used this table for was when we first started doing the getting appropriations based on completers. I took this table, I ran a report, and I said, I want to know how many students are 100%. And then I tied that back to their Sebastian record, or their the graduation table. Dang, having a senior moment. That the table and banner that usually you keep your the Shaw Dagger. I couldn't remember that table. I tie it back to the Shaw Dagger table. If they weren't marked completed in Shaw Dagger, then I knew that these were students that we could then mark for as graduates. And we actually have done a couple of projects now with schools that do something real similar to that. They just take a slice of code from here, look for the 100%ers in DAP audit detail, DAP audit percent equals 100, and compare that to Shaw Dagger to see if they have already been marked for graduation. If not, then either go ahead and mark them as graduating, or send them through maybe some kind of email to ask them to apply for graduation or something like that. I don't know what your process is, but this right here is just a simple table with a simple field that you can get a lot of information from. So, but you need to be aware that multiple records per student could exist. Now, what I also did was then what we call it our nudge to the finish line project, where we took students and we started out, I think, at an 80% completion in that field right there, and we ran a list of all the students that were 80 or greater percent that hadn't been marked in Shawdegger, and then contacted those students and said, hey, you're close to graduating. Do you have some transfer work? We can reverse transfer back to us or what? So, in Melody, I know you put in Sierra College. I don't think we did Sierra College.
Oh, okay.
I think they may have done their own. We did a school. Dave Neal did, recently did Georgia Southern, and then also another school. I can't remember it. He's actually going to do a presentation on that in 2 weeks at the Cohesion Zoom conference.
Oh, that's cool.
Do a presentation on that. It was pretty straightforward, and now.
Because what you're describing sounds just like how they explained to me what they ended up doing too. And I think they did do that 80% threshold. They did it. They would notify them. And then if they didn't respond with a certain period of time, they were auto awarding to get their numbers up, because we're now being paid.
Yeah.
Part of what our rate includes is graduation, how many awards we're awarding. So
yeah. It's a
popular conversation.
Yeah, our graduation rate shot up. I mean, we got a lot of kudos for that. Now, so the first year we just did the 100%, and then the second year we did that threshold amount. And I tell you what, now our situation was we had a lot of transfer students, so we would get a student would go to our school for 2 to 3 semesters and then transfer to Texas A&M or Sam Houston, and so we had a big reverse transfer program with those schools. And that's what we would do then. And we'd say, hey, you're at 80%. All you need are a couple of classes. Did you take a class at Sam Houston, for example? And we then even got into an agreement with Sam Houston where they would send us their list of students from our school. And then we would auto graduate them that way. I tell you, it's probably the most positive thing I ever did. Most of the time, when you are in student services, when you contact students, it's a negative thing. And I don't know how many students said, is it going to cost me something, or why are you reaching out to me? They didn't know that we were making money off of you, but I mean, it was a positive experience back and forth. So I would recommend looking into doing something like that. It's a very simple report. So I've got I'm going to stick something in here in the chat window for you, Jeff, to run. Let me take out that schema. Okay, so, and this may need some work. Again, you guys are the more SQL savvy than I am, but something like that is what we ran. So maybe try that. And I'll include all this in a file to you guys. So what I'm doing here is really just taking the max date for each group, each degree. And taking out, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I missed that one. And then taking out the frozen audits and just
that's it, right?
Mm-hmm. You may and you may want to leave those frozen audits in. that may cause you some, you don't want to have double data. See if that runs.
Max. Type.
Did we miss
percentage?
Step audit day.
Audit percentage. Oh, percentage 1. So maybe it should be.
Should be %1. Is it not liking that descending?
It works on mine.
Oh, it works on yours?
Yeah, I think seemed like you were looks like you were only running that one little part of it. Can you highlight the whole thing and run it?
There we go.
There we go. And even on here, you may want to look a little deeper to make sure you're not picking up any doubles. Now, since we just ran it like this, it's going to be anybody in the database. So it's all your old students. So you may want to do something like, put a term value in there greater than something. We didn't display term, but why don't you go ahead and add that as one of your select, say DAP term.
DAP term?
Yeah. And then maybe say something like, DAP term greater than something.
And they could do.
Yeah.
12. So that's last year. We could do even 20.
Yeah, so there you go. That's going to be more the ones right now. 97 means that everything's in progress, and
and do yep. Okay.
So good, good little quick area to get some good information from. I'm going to take back over sharing. I'm going to share my screen now. But hold on where you are in terms of we're going to go back to you here in a bit. So things to be aware of. You make sure that there's you take into account that there's multiple records per student, and remember those 5 fields, particularly term and degree, and the audits. And at the bottom here, this does not include the credits needed or credits completed or anything like this. It's, again, just a high-level summary. Okay. It can grow large, but you guys aren't that bad, and you might want to take a look at this script. Let's see if we can take a look at it real quick. What is it again? More DAP, find bad audits. It's out there. So what this is going to do, everybody can see my screen here. It's going to, it looks like it creates an ID file first. So it's going from DAP audit detail, and then it looks like now audit tree detail. I haven't mentioned that table yet because there's really not a lot to look at that. That's where the actual audit is stored, and that's in a mostly binary format. So you really can't see much in DAP audit detail, but basically what this thing does is go out and find the bad audits that no longer have anything associated with them, gets rid of DAP audit detail and DAP binary detail. Okay.
So I noticed in the records that we've generated here that there's a DAP what old and a DAP what new.
DAP what? Yep. Yeah. Hang on, Jeff. Hang on to that just a second.
Okay. All right.
Because to be honest with you, when I get to that in a minute, it's maybe some of the most confusing part of this whole conversation today. So just remember, guys, Jeff brought it up. So,
okay. All right.
So hang on to that. Yeah. I'm going to talk about that. Okay. Is there anything else in here you need to know? Okay. No. Okay. So that's DAP audit detail. That's one set in the simple type. And then the second group of data that gets created is through this curriculum planning assistant. Again, okay. So Melody, yeah, these are the tables we're fixing to talk about here. So the CPA tables have to be created, and they're created based on the flags that are set in that table we looked at yesterday, CFG 020. These tables include DAP result detail, DAP res class detail, and DAP non-res detail. Probably won't even look at non-res at all. That's if you have any non-degree, non-course type requirements, thesis, dissertation committees, that type of stuff. Usually just graduate school folks have that type of thing. Your data is typically going to be in these two tables, DAP result detail, DAP res class detail. This is the one that one of you looked at yesterday that was, what was it, 37 million or something like that, some big amount. So, all right. So
it takes forever to run.
It takes forever for.
I just remember to populate it, because Jeff, I know that we're not running it just constantly, so that data is not live. We would run it. I think you ran it a few times for us so we can report against it, but we're not just constantly generating the data for those tables, right?
Correct, as far as I know, yeah.
Okay, so what I would do is I would go ahead and truncate those tables, because and hear me out. Remember what I just said, and then you think about it. I mean, I can't tell you how to do your database, but listen to what I'm going to say and then decide, but you may want to just think about truncating it. Okay. All right. So the way the CPA process works is you set the fields that you want to report against in CFG 020 results. Then you run a background process, and then you run an audit, and then the background process takes that audit and turns it into data in DAP result detail. And then within DAP result detail, if you think about what's in an audit, that middle part of the audit that we've been talking about the whole time, everything in there can become data that resides in DAP result detail. And it's all dependent on the field DAP result type. So that'll tell us what type of data is in this record, and then what the rest of the fields in the record represent. And so that could be, maybe it's a course that still needs to be taken. Maybe it's a course you've already taken. Maybe it's the result, the total block. Maybe it's your major information. Maybe it's fall through information. All that, each one of those represents a record in DAP result detail with a different result type. So that's the key here, is that everything gets put in here, but it's based on this result type. Now, I just got a couple of more kind of slides. So just to tell you that a lot, and this is, and honestly, this is typically a week-long presentation that I've kind of boiled down to about 20 slides. So we will go through some of this, but you can create a heck of a lot of records, as you guys already have seen. So let's jump right into, well, first, you got the same type of setup. So like with Melody's record, she had a different multiple degrees. So she's going to have multiple sets of records out here in DAP result detail. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Jeff. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at Melody's records in DAP result detail. So again, a little bit of a code here. Let's just say, and I'll do the thing for you. Okay, so same general thing. So I'll put this in the message deal here. So instead of DAP audit detail, now let's look at DAP result detail. And can we tell how many that's been fetched there? Is it 1 of 500 so far? Okay, all right. So one student, student Melody out there has 884 records in this table. You guys were saying you had about 7,000 or 8,000 students. You're going to have that many possibly a good 500 to 600 records per student the way you have it set up right now. So that's why that table is so big. All right. Now, same kind of delimitation here by degree and all that, all the terms. So why don't you now say where degree is, and Melody, what is your degree again? It's
I think I'm a business for transfer right now, but I don't remember.
AS-T. So let's say where DAP degree equals AS-T. Okay, run that. And how many of those do we have? 311, is that what that says? Okay, all right. So let's take a look at this field. I mean, these records. So obviously the first 5 things are the things we've been talking about: ID, audit type, school, degree, and active term. Okay, then we get into information about each record. We've got, let's not worry about the sequence numbers right now. The DAP requirement ID, those of you that have done some scribing, that should look familiar. That's a scribe block that it's referencing. So RA 558, and I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to have your diagnostics report pulled up, Melody. That is the degree block. So that is your degree block is 558. The rule node is not that big a deal, but here is the DAP result detail. I mean, DAP result type. That is really the key here. That's the field that holds the key to everything else in the field. So you've got a bunch of header qualifiers. Here's a block, CRCL needed. Okay, that's good to know. Run, I've got another little script for you to run. This one right here. And I'm going to put Melody's ID in for you. And so, and I'll take out DAP. I'll take out DAP schema. So I want to put this in the chat, run this, and it kind of gives us a summary of all her different types. result types that are out there. Okay, so let's look at that a little bit. So we've got one audit ID field record, 5 of those blocks CRCL applied, and we'll talk more about each one of these types here in a minute. But see, you have a whole bunch of different types of records out there. And you see the big one is the header qualifier, and honestly, that's the one that means less than anything. So I would always recommend taking that one out. So you can kind of probably figure out a little bit of these. Insufficient class applied. Those are the classes that dropped into the insufficient bucket. Insufficient CRCL is a total amount of credits and classes that are in there. Same for the fall class, that's the fall through classified. The class applied there up there, those are the classes that are actually applied to the degree. So lots of information there, but we don't know yet exactly what that is. I really wanted to run that though, just to kind of show you what type of data is getting created. So let's look at your snippet of code. So we're pulling out the max term for this. And okay, so we're just delimiting it by the max term. Okay, now let's go, let's dig down here a little bit deeper. Let's look at maybe the block CRCL needed is what we want to do. So here's a snippet of code I'm going to send to you that let's just look at those particular classes. Actually, why don't you just modify what you have there? Maybe it might be easier. So just make a copy of that one, and let's run it another one, and let's just say select star, and then at the end, and say, instead of grouping by and ordering by, let's just say where DAP result type equal, and we'll just start out with block CRCL need. So it'd be and DAP result type. Not to say DAP result type. We and then type it just like it says there, block CRCL needed in all caps. That one's fine, Jeff. That one doesn't say a whole lot. You don't have a that one's given out. That one gets created every time. It's not very exciting. Try block CRCL needed. Yeah, the second one there, or the third one down. Yeah, that one right there. Do that one. Okay. Okay. So same thing. Five keys, and now you see the different requirement IDs. So you can see those are all your different blocks, Melody. So in that particular degree, and that's your AA degree actually. So, you know, we may want to also say, call this, looks like you actually, your latest degree is AAT, not AST. So why don't you, in that active term, and you'll have to go up, Jeff, it would have to be in that, yeah, right there, and say and DAP degree equals AS-T. And it might have been better to actually pull the latest date, not the latest term, but that's okay. Okay, so here's a little bit different. So this shows us a little bit more actually. So now we have the DAP result type, and then if you look at DAP value 1 and 2, and if you'll move out to the right a little bit, Jeff, you'll see mostly zeros there, but that one block has a value of 22. Well, in the document, and while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up the reporting document. It's actually a very good document. It's the advanced reporting document. It has a table in there of all of these result types and then what the different values after that means. So which one is this again? Which one are you looking at? Block CRCL needed. So I'm gonna take over the sharing again. Just remember that she had that Jeff was showing that block CRCL needed. And let me get to share screen. So in the table, here is block CRCL needed, block type. You can see the different information. Now we know value 1 are the credits needed. Value 2 is the classes needed. Okay, and you go back to what she had a value, I think 22 or something like that in your credits. So it should correlate to her worksheet here that she needs 22 credits. It's kind of hard to see here because you've got way more credits since you've been playing with your record and everything. But I guess if you counted up all these, you would have 22 credits that you still need to.
No, I see it right there where it says units required versus units applied. That's how you'll get to the 22 when you go down to the actual block. Right there, units required, right, units applied.
Here yeah, here's that major. Yeah, yeah. So that's where that data comes from. Now, what I'm going to do now is remember I've been telling you that it's all based on this DAP result detail. So let's go to DAP result detail. I'm sorry, all based on your controller value in CFG 020. So I'm going to go to CFG 020, and the table is called results. And usually we have to make a big deal about copying down all the values you have set to yes and all the values you have set to no and save them. Well, in your case, I'm just going to set everything to no. So what we just looked at was kind of the end game. So how do we get to that data that's out there? How do we get to those 800 records or however many records was there for that AST degree? So first of all, it's based on the value in here. And really, I would probably want to take a look, Melody, at that CPOS thing that you guys wrote, and let's see what exactly y'all are using, because you're not going to need all these set to yes. I can tell you that right now. But for now, I'm just going to set everything to no. I'm going to save it. Now, that's step 1. Step 2 is to run an audit. And then step 3 is to have this background process going on. So you can do all that at one. You can either have so I'm going to do a process new. So I ran a new audit. Jeff, would you mind? I'm going to hand it back over to you. Would you mind running that very first DAP audit detail again on Melody for that AST degree?
Sure, no problem.
Move back up. We want to look at the DAP, not result detail, but the audit detail.
Oh, audit detail.
So they're tied together. So just we're gonna get down to the mystery of the what field in DAP audit detail. So you should have one or you may have overwritten it.
Really? DAP audit detail? Oh,
That one, there's one right there.
Well, that's DAP results.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I was looking at one above it. But,
Plus account.
yeah, so just do a DAP audit detail for melodies. Just do it.
Oh yeah, so it's right here.
Okay, so should be one right there. Those top two we just ran. And so go ahead and move all the way out to the right. All the way to the right, where we get to the DAP what field. Okay,
Oh.
So we have now a new, an old. At the bottom, we have results. You got all kinds of stuff here. What does all that mean? All right. Whenever you run a new audit, DAP 22, whenever you do any kind of new audit, it creates a record out here and it sets the value to new. All right. Go ahead. I'm gonna run another. I'm gonna press process new one more time on her, and I want you to run that again. And then take a look at out to the outside. And you're probably going to see the same, our records changed. And let's look at, instead of looking at everything, let's look at the timestamp, the DAP what, and the DAP degree. So DAP degree, DAP what, and DAP timestamp. Okay, so those, so we've got a, oh, by the way, and let's also say, and not frozen in DAP freeze type equals space.
Is it freeze type?
Freeze type. Mm-hmm. Equals space. That'll do it. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Run that one. Okay. All right. So there's our queues. You know, we've got the AST. We'll just look at the AST queue right now. So you got a new and an old. All right. If you would run it again, if I did another audit, not you, Jeff, if I did mine again, same thing. That guy that was new, he'd get changed to old, and a new record would be created with new. That's just a field out there that's just sitting there sitting there waiting. It's waiting for something else to happen. And that's the third step in doing CPA data, and that you actually have to run a process. If you recall yesterday, when I looked at your cron job, I said we were looking for something called res start, R-E-S start.
Oh, yes.
And res start, what it does is, and I'll just put it out there for everybody to make sure they understand what I'm saying. Res start starts a process called DAP 25, and you don't have to memorize this one, Melody. That's not on the test. That's extra credit. But DAP 25 is a process that sits there. If you had started Res start and if you started DAP 25, it's a process that sits there in the background, and it comes alive every 15 seconds by default. And it's a low-level process that shouldn't have much impact on your system, although I'm not sure I would recommend you guys to run it anyways. But it sits out there and it says, okay, are there any DAP audit details out here with a DAP what value of new? And it goes through the table real quick, and if it finds any with a value of new, it creates CPA data, DAP results and detail fields or records for that audit. and then it sets the value to results, and it goes back to sleep. The next time you run an audit, it does the same, and 15 seconds later, it does the same thing. Has any audits been created? Any of them set to new? If not, it goes to sleep. Well, if you do an audit and then do another audit, a DAP22 and another DAP22 and another DAP22 without having this res start going, instead of having multiple news out here in the queue, it sets anyone that does not get CPA data created for to old. So basically what that old means is no CPA data was ever created for that one. Now down here at the bottom, you see two records. Back when she had an AA degree, CPA data got created for those two, for that degree. And that's probably all those 800 records she has out there right now, probably came from those two things. Okay, so it's just sitting here. We don't have DAP25 running or anything. Nothing's happening. We're just sitting here, and until we either turn that on or you can run it from transit, nothing is going to happen. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to run DAP25, but I want to run it through transit where we can have a lot of control over it. So can somebody get into transit? I know Betsy, you were in it earlier, or if you want to get into it, Jeff, if that may be easier, that way we won't have to flip screens back and forth. So you want to go ahead and pop into transit real quick?
Yep.
Now, your functional users, this has been a part of transit from day one, but they may or may not ever knew about it. So the command to run an audit is what? DAP22. So look for DAP22. First thing it's going to ask you is your selection criteria. Let's just put in Melody's ID number.
704680.
Okay.
You
right?
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yep.
Press continue. Okay. So here are the sub questions. We want to academic audit goes directly to that audit type. We know that now as AA. So let's go ahead and create a new audit. Let's go ahead and select level. Yeah, I think you have to select level, and which is going to be undergraduate. And you can check those if you want. It doesn't really matter. We don't want to freeze type, so let's don't do that. You always have to have an output, and usually it's no. You put no output in there. Now, this question right here is the one I was talking about. This question has been in PC Transit, but it's always been there. Most of the time, your functional users have probably skipped over that. By checking that, and go ahead and check it, once DAP22 runs for Melody on this run, it's going to right away run DAP25. Okay. So a couple of things I want you to remember. Before you do anything, Jeff, I want you to jump back over into your SQL developer. Okay. And how many records were out there for her again? Let's go back and look at DAP result detail. How many? It was 800 and something.
I think there was.
And let's just do it let's do that one there. Okay, so let's do it for the next one with AST, with a degree AST, that next selection you have there.
Oh.
And we can just get the total from the bottom. 311, okay?
Yeah, 311.
All right, okay, so let's keep that number in the back of our minds. And so go ahead and transit, hit takeoff or launch or whatever you want to call it. We can check the job on here. It shouldn't take long, should run it. Okay, try it again.
Oh, clean up.
Yep, it's still working. Okay, it's deleting 311 records is what it's doing, to be honest with you. So so what it does is it says, okay, for this degree, for this term, for this person, delete all of those DAP result detail records and then create new records based on what my what my values in that CFD 020 table is set up to be as. Okay, go ahead and see if it's finished yet. It's still working.
Still going. $891.
It may take a second.
Yeah, that table is really massive.
It is, and that's why you should probably do something about it, because it should not, this is not, there's no reason for you to have that many records out there.
So if we truncate DAP result detail, should we also do the DAP, what was it, reclass?
Res class, yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute too. Yeah, it's probably not what that table is. Might as well mention it now while we're waiting. DAP res class detail. What that is if you've turned on the flag to show what requirements have been met, it basically puts a record out there for every class you've taken. So however many classes Melody has taken, a record for each one of those will be put into res class detail. So it won't be near as large as results detail.
And so it's not associated. I mean, the two tables are somewhat separated. They're independent.
They're somewhat associated, and there's links, there's keys that can tie them together. But it's just the res class detail is only going to be the number of classes they took. So if she took whatever it was, 20 or 30 classes, that's how many records are going to be out there. Now, what's happening right now? I don't know if you caught what I said. It deletes everything for that degree and that group of 5, and then it bills whatever more you have to have based on your values in CFG 020. I suspect with these all turned off, it's only going to build a few records out there. But I assume that it's going through that whole table that's 50 million or whatever, and cleaning Melody's her group out, her 311, and it's going to replace it probably with only 1 or 2 or 3. See if it's changed at all now. It's actually got more out there now. But
yeah, 315.
So it's really those 4, and it's probably in the process of deleting the other 311. This table is grown out of control. I can just tell you that right now.
So do most of your clients, do they run reports off of the main tables, or do they use the CPA?
They use the ones that use CPA. Use CPA. I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen anybody have them all checked though. And you saw where, what was it? It was quite a few records just from that header qualifiers, which that's one right away you need to turn off. There's only you should have about half of them turned on, and we'll go through those that you need turned on. But if that's the case, and then then the other thing is run it through transit with a selection criteria. So like Melody, you guys were talking about, you said you were running CPA through there. So if you would just use the same type of pop cell you're using for your CPA runs, run that through DAP 22 here, it'll only run those CPA records. So truncate everything and then just run it for those.
I sent you the 2 or 3 scripts that we've used, and then that's been it. We have not dabbled too far in it, but I emailed them to you.
Okay.
Because again, we ran into the issue where it was too much. Jeff just said we couldn't leave it running to where we could query against it whenever we wanted to. So we didn't get very far.
So it looks like the first one's just going against the banner table. But
You could share your screen if you want to show them. I just emailed
Yeah.
them to you. I didn't email them to everybody, but
yeah, okay. So Jeff, I'm gonna stop yours and let that thing keep going. Here is her email. So it looks like this one is just looking at well, it's selecting DAP CRN from DAP Res class. Okay. Okay. In DAP Res class, this one shouldn't be too bad, I wouldn't think, is it?
Yeah, so if you want to share your screen, then we,
Oh. I thought I was. Can you not see that? Maybe I didn't quit. Well, I did share my screen, but I didn't actually hit the share button. So it might have helped a little bit. So, okay, so it looks like this one's going against DAP Res class here. Does this one take a long time too? And it may just be those tables, just that one table so big. Jeff, take a look at Res class detail. This table right here, and how big is it for you? How many records are out there in it?
detail. Yeah.
Res class detail, yeah.
Oh, it's only got a million rows, million four.
Okay, I'd truncate it too. There's no reason for that. But the question though, Melody, is how are these getting populated? Are you guys running?
when did Matt, when did we work on this? This was probably a year ago now. So I'm sorry, it's very fuzzy. You asked about how long it took?
Well, how did DAP Res class, let me pull up the other one real quick.
Because I know we had an issue.
Okay, so this one's using this is using result detail. So yeah, and both of them. So this one is going to take a long time right here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember them taking a long time, at least a couple of them, but it was some kind of issue with SPOS score and missing SPOS score records. And we were trying to figure out how we can confirm that CPOS was run on them because we had an issue where it wasn't necessarily running against every student.
Okay.
And so just identifying those students, at least that first query that I sent you was trying to identify the missing SPOS score, or the missing records that got skipped in the CPOS process. I don't remember why they were getting skipped. There was a reason for it.
Okay.
They were getting skipped because they were old G numbers that weren't being
Okay.
Which that would be another great conversation to have eventually. How can we, is there a better way than how we're already doing it when it comes to loading students in DegreeWorks to where we don't have that missing record or two each week because of older G numbers and so on, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe when we revisit CPOS, hopefully soon, we can reach out to Dennis and talk about CPA.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to make more use of these tables. It's a lot of good data. It's a lot of data.
Oh gosh, there's tons of data out here. It's just a matter of gleaning it out of there.
Yeah, there's so much potential.
But you got to run something to get the table populated. Like I just, or Jeff just ran that DAP 22 in transit. You've got to do something to get it populated. So that's why I'm wondering.
Oh no, Jeff, whatever we did, it was when we had Crispino. And I don't remember if he was involved or Jeff, if you did it, but one of you ran something that populated it.
Okay.
I didn't run anything.
Yeah, because
he probably ran then either turned Res Start on or ran it through DAP 22 transit. So.
I know that was in test, and so we were playing around with trying to get that.
Yeah, we were in Dev 9. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And it was good. It was useful, but again, it was just a snapshot because of how much load it had. We just ended up running it based on a snapshot. And we talked about, well, maybe we just run it at census or certain times of the semester, but letting everyone know that it's not real-time data, which is a bummer, but.
Yeah. Okay.
So if there's a workaround that would be awesome.
Well, this one is still cleaning up, still doing a cleanup.
Okay. All right. That's,
Maybe.
to say, I don't know if I've ever had it run that long before. Let's see, what else can we go? Okay, so here's just the discussion of that what. So does that make sense to everybody now why that field is there and what it represents? So it goes from new to results or new to old.
So that's why there's so many rows, because for every new is that there's an old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you guys have that Q value set to 2 for your DAP audit detail, and really there's no reason why you have to even keep 2 records. I usually recommend just setting it to 1.
Are you sure? Even if we have the whole issue with the degree versus the cert, I want to say there was a reason we set it to 2.
No, I mean, because they're gonna be separate queues.
Okay.
That queue is just for that one degree. So cert will have its queue and degree will have its queue. You're freezing audit, so that moves them out of the queue.
And maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe I'm thinking of the conversation we had about frozen audits, but I remember us debating the count.
Yeah, you can freeze all the audits you want, and that doesn't do anything. I can say I don't know if I ever, in my time, in the real world like you guys are, that I ever went back and looked at a historical audit that wasn't frozen. Now we froze it. If we freeze it, and there is certainly benefits in going back to freezing, looking at frozen audits. But if I'm just sitting here pressing process new, and if like your students now in production, they're getting recreated every night. So to be honest with you, you've got one extra audit for everybody that you could probably get rid of.
Cool.
So that count value is where again?
It's in CFG 020 and then DAP 14.
DAP 14.
When in doubt, that's usually where it is.
Yep. Yeah. I think it was you, Melody, yesterday said our good friend CFG 020. Yep. Then just to figure out which record out is, but this value right there. I don't know. That's up to you guys. So so
I'm thinking about just go ahead and setting that to 1.
Makes sense, Jeff. I mean, if they really, it would just be a business practice encouraging them to freeze if they truly need to keep something. And the only ones that truly should be freezing on a regular basis is financial aid, since obviously they freeze it when they pay off so they can see what they paid off of.
Well, I think the evaluators also freeze.
Oh, okay, when they award, that makes sense.
Yeah, probably.
But it's still just the practice of if you need to keep it, freeze it. Otherwise, I like it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Now I've seen schools that abuse that have, and I've had counselors that abuse that they just froze it every time. Like, why are you freezing day? And they have hundreds of frozen audits out there.
I thought we capped. Don't we have a cap on a number of frozen audits we're allowed to have 2 though? Is that stored anywhere? Because I thought we did. Oh, okay.
No. So, now, what I would recommend is think twice about letting advisors or your counselors freeze audits.
So I don't think our counselors freeze audits. I don't think so.
I was gonna say if that's already if that rabbit's already out of the hat, it would be hard to put back in. But
right, I understand that, but that's something to think about.
That's a good point, though.
Okay, so DAP 25, just a reminder, that's the one that's actually, so nothing really happens until DAP 25 in terms of CPA. And again, it can run from you can just leave it going all the time if if you clean out that database and if your number of values that you have turned on are small, there's not a problem with running it all the time. And then you've got real life data in there. But your situation right now, I would not have it on all the time. And here's the check mark that Jeff showed us. And all the different values. I think here in a minute, I get to where we actually start talking about the CFG 020 and what it means. So I'm going to skip down a few. Okay, I copied this right out of the the manual. So in CFG 020, let's start talking about that a little bit, Jeff, and let me know when that thing finishes. By the way, if you'll keep checking that. So in CFG 020, and I'll pull that back up again, and it's CFG 020 results. And by the way, nothing else looks at this table, only CPA. So you can muck with this table all you want to. Nobody else messes with this. This doesn't impact anything else. So this table in your advanced reporting guide will correlates directly to what's here. Maybe it's better if I look at there. So build stu info. Let's see. And the way I have it, it may not be quite in order, but so build catalog year and goal data. So somewhere on here, it should say build catalog year and goal data. Build list of classes. And it looks like they've changed the wording a little bit on me. Dang it, sorry about that. Let me go to the document. That may be easier to read it out of there. Sorry about scrolling. So everybody close your eyes for a second so you don't get seasick. Here we go. Okay, so I got the controller up twice for y'all. Dang it, sorry about that. My mouse control. Ah, crap. Get back in the controller. So every one of these has a corresponding row in this table. So if you have like build the block header CRCL needed chart check to yes, then it'll create this type of result types. Now, if you have build classes applied, it'll create all these different types of result types. The things where we said earlier, the header qualifiers and the header advice, those are the things that I would turn off, because you're not really going to be looking at that. You're going to be looking at the classes applied, classes needed, and the credits and the classes needed. Those are the main things you're going to be looking for. Now, the second table in this book is also good in the document in that it describes what each one of these result types are. So we looked at block CRCL needed earlier, and it's the number of classes and credits needed for this block. So again, each one has a good little representation here of what it is. Now, and then if you go down a little bit further, every result type is then depicted. What does the value 1 represent? What does value 2 represent? So like for audit ID earlier, I said that's not very exciting. Really, all it does is have the ID number. Now, this does actually tie back to DAP audit detail if for some reason you ever need to tie back to that. Okay, so with all these turned off, what you're going to end up getting is like a DAP audit ID, I think, and a catalog year. And you're probably going to get those two for both of your degrees. So that's why we said when Jeff, you ran that and it was 4 additional records built. Those records got built, and it's now waiting to delete all the other 811 records. So that's just those are just standard out there all the time. Let me jump back to my PowerPoint now. Oops, what was it that? So every time you run it, it'll delete everything and then rewrite it. If any of those flags that you have set has to do with a class that you've taken. So let's go back to it. So build list of classes applied to rules. So if we had this set to yes, then it would also build the res class tables. It would otherwise, if you have that set to no, and in fact, when we look at our data here in a minute, when this thing finishes, Melody won't have any values for those 2 degrees and those 2 catalog years in DAP res class detail, because we turn this flag off, so nothing's going to get built out there for that. So we'll go through this in a little bit, and I'm to kind of point out the ones I would turn on. But then a lot of it is just testing it out, and I've done that in the past, like in our test system. I've just sat there, turned this flag on, and hit DAP, ran that DAP 22 in transit, and looked and saw what results got created, and then turned the next flag on, did the same thing, and it'll give you a good idea of where you need to be. So let me so just some examples of an SQL, like if you want to know the number of times a course was taken, if you had the class applied flag turned on, which goes back up here, which one is class applied? Well, build classes applied need to be set to yes. So then if you looked at CFG 020, build classes applied, that if that thing was set to yes, then this type of report could be run. And I think in Melody's email, let me go back to it. You looked at fall classes applied. If you can, that's fall through classes applied. So to get that built, same thing. I looked at my chart here, fall classes applied. Okay, so it's can be build fall through and build classes applied. So I turn both of those flags on, run it, and then you should be able to get data in this particular report. So honestly, Melody, if you ran this report, whoops, go back to your email. If you ran this report, that's the only 2 flags you need turned on. You can have all the other ones turned off, because it's only going to be nice. The only result type we're looking for is this right here. And so that should eliminate a lot of stuff out of your table right there. So.
Sweet.
Okay, is this making sense so far? This is a pretty complicated concept. I'm not gonna lie to you, probably one of the hardest to talk about sometimes.
Definitely been a lot of conversations in the e-communities. That's where I get a lot of, that's where I got some of those queries from, is the e-communities. People banging their heads against the wall trying to figure it out. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Well, it's just not a straightforward process. You just can't run an audit and the data's out there. You have to go through all this rigmarole. That's a word I use all the time, Melody. I heard you say it a while ago, but that's one of our Texas words. Yeah, I mean, you have to go through a bunch just to get these records created. And then you have to know what it is you're looking for. And we know that we're looking for a result type of class applied. And then you have to know, okay, in result type class applied, well, let's take a look at that in the manual. What does that actually mean if it's a class applied? So look in here and say, class applied. Okay, value 1 is the discipline. And so like for their example, accounting, and mine was English. Value 2 is the course number. So like accounting 112. Here's an ID that will then tie it to res class detail, and then a record will get created in res class detail. And the reason you would look at res class detail, it'll add more things in there like grade, when it was taken, if it was taken for pass, fail, the CRN number of the course, and all that information. And then finally this, and look at here, the values 4 through, and then all the numbers, they're not even used. So we know if we get a result type of this, we don't even care about any of this stuff. But then now the free text is something that you might, it's just it prints it out a little better. So I usually use it if I'm talking about a class. Going back up to the top, I didn't mention the RA number. That ties directly back into a scribe block. So if you wanted to know how many classes were applied to a particular scribe block, there it is. You can just do it that way. There's also some views that are already predefined that you have whenever and Jeff, we could, and I like to use these views because it, Jeff, let me hand it back over to you, and I want you just to display some of these. And all they do is they've identified what the some of the values are, and they predefined a result type search.
Yeah, so I went ahead and changed that value to 1 for the audit history.
And production?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
All right, so where's my, oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
So
here's one. I'm going to put it in
okay.
in the chat room, in the chat box. It's one of the views.
Oh.
So if you want to just describe that, or.
Oh yeah, there it goes.
And it actually has a little more logic into it. So it'll, in fact, let me just display it from, let's see. I've got it spelled out when they define it in your database. So hang on 1 second.
Okay.
Might be easier to see. This was class applied, right?
Yeah.
So in the chat, and yeah, actually, I'll just take back over sharing. So here's the view right there. So it just kind of redefines these things. So you could say select stu ID and that course key and that kind of thing. And it defines like the course key is the DAP free text. And then if you see at the bottom where it says result type equal class applied and audit type equal AA. So Melody, in your report that you showed me, you could have probably used this view and it could have probably grabbed pretty much what you had there.
So do you want me to run that?
Well, it's already out there. It's just a matter of using it.
Okay. Right.
Using it as a instead of selecting it instead of the individual table. Okay, what next? Okay, so I recommend turning off all the label flags, the remarks, the bill remarks, and the proxy advice, and that which should cut down quite a bit of what you had. So the remarks, you really don't need the errors. And if you want, I'll spell this all out for you, Jeff, and then just recommend turning these off. And then I would play with it. Once you get the database in line in terms of cleaned out or a lot less than what it is now, running these things should be almost instantaneous. So you should be able to run this and get it right away. You shouldn't have to sit here and wait 30 minutes for that to come back. I assume it's still running, is it, when you look at your thing?
I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's correct. It is still running.
Oh my God, we did a really minor deal here, so I can see why you guys got frustrated with it running so long. So why don't we take a break? It's 2:10. Why don't we take about a 15-minute break? Come
Okay.
back about 2:25, and then we'll move on to the next reporting, which is completely different. So
Okay.
okay. All right, everybody back?
Physically.
Yeah, it gets grueling sometimes. Okay, let me say something different now. Let's talk about reporting from plans or from your SCP tables. So this is something that's going to be different than what, if Matthew, you've written some reports in the past, you're going to have to modify them based on the new planners. The way the data is stored in the plans is now completely different than the way it's done with DAP audit detail or the CPA reports. It's you would think they would want to get all these things together and do them all the same, but apparently not. They're all different. In the planner, as soon as you make a change in the planner, whether you're using the responsive dashboard planner or the classic dashboard planner, but not the one you guys have, that's a little confusing. So hopefully I can make myself clear on that. You've got, let me pull up the planner. So I'm just going to go to your classic dashboard. And to make a note that there's a problem with the plans. And we'll just continue using Melody's ID number. And that was, anybody remember her number?
That was, I think, 708 680, I believe.
704 680, I bet.
Oh yeah, 74. Yeah, 74 680.
Okay. So when I'm talking about the SCP, I'm talking about this being the classic version of the plans, whereas and I'll just refer to what you guys have in production right now as the old version. And so remember, the old version's tables are going to be different than what these tables are right here. And as soon as you make a change, and so the way you make changes now, I think I showed you the edit view earlier. We can add a class here, or we can, still getting that error. We can, go ahead and try to do this real quick. So I'm making changes right here. And whenever I press save, the database is already written out. There's no DAP 25 process that has to run or any of that kind of stuff. This is, to me, this is how it should be. This is the normal way data is stored in a database. Whenever you save it, it's stored in the database. It's all there for you. The tables are highly normalized, which I think is good as well. You're going to see it does not repeat much data at all in any of the tables. So there's different tables. It's not like that DAP result detail table we saw earlier that had all this data inside of it, and they tried to fit everything into one table. Here they have separate table types for separate types of data. So again, I think they did it right with this. It must be a new set of developers did this as opposed to some of their other stuff. So to me, these are a lot easier to report out of. I go back to some of the conversation earlier too. I think it's some super information in here and a lot of great data I think you guys ought to be looking at, and especially since you have so many plans out there. So the tables in question here, let me make this a little bigger. It all starts out with a SEP plan. That's the overall parent plan. There are notes. Every time you have any kind of notes, there are notes tied to each level. So think of each one of these as levels. So the SEP plan has a SEP plan notes table tied to it. Then there is a separate entry for every term in the plan. These tie back then to the overall plan. Again, notes for it. Then each term has groups, and within a group you can have you have the different, either a GPA, a class, a placeholder, or test, or another group, which is that choice option. And then each one of these has note fields. The next one maybe shows you a little bit more graphically how this thing is set up. So again, the SEP_plan is your first table and has your student ID in there. And that's the only place student ID is in any of these tables. SEP plan term ties to your plan, and it has the term ID in it. Only place that's the term ID is right here. Then there's groups, and then there's classes under the groups. So to get to this, if you want to find what classes a particular student has in their plan, you have to tie all four of these together to get that information. That makes sense to everybody? So
Yep.
if that, and really to me, that's more logical than all the other stuff we've had to deal with. So how many times is the course taken within a term is our plan for a term, which is a report. I think it should be easily grabbable, and one I think it would be important for you to have. And I've got that in I'll just copy, I'll run it through DBB here. It kind of shows you. So I took that same thing and I said, I want to select, I want to display my term, and I want to select the course, how many times it was, and how many times it was taken. So we take plan, plan term, plan group, and plan class, tie them all together, and don't laugh at my SQL. You know, those of you that are real gurus of SQL, you can probably do all the joins and the pluses on there and all that kind of stuff. I'm not that savvy with SQL. I kind of hammer it out the old way. So, but anyway, I'm tying the SEP plan ID to the SEP term ID, then tying the term ID, term group ID, which is within that term, to a plan group. And then I'm tying the group ID to the individual courses. Okay. So let's run this. I actually ran it earlier. We were on break. And I just get this kind of report. So it shows that, let's see if it, and the different terms, I'll just take this one, term 20, 20, 20, 21, 20, 21, 20, history 120 has been planned 8 times. So as I mentioned earlier, the more plans you have out there, the better your reporting is going to be. Looks like you've got a lot of nursing plans out there. I went and did a quick run of the number of plans you had, and you have quite a few, and that's what we converted. And I remember when that was going on, Ed and Dave were asking, have you ever heard of that many plans getting converted? And I had. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not unusual. So I just looked at how many are active. Just to describe SEP plan real quick for you. So you see it has the plan ID and the student ID, the template ID. If you want to tie it back to a template, that value is going to be filled in. If you didn't use a template, and I don't know if you guys use templates or not, it would be blank. A description of what it is, and that comes directly from the description field in the plans. So that's directly from here. Whether it's active or locked is part of it. How it got approved, the scope, which is, I think for you guys, it's this plan type. I think that's actually the scope.
So I know that we've had some plan templates.
Uh-huh.
I can't say
we'll take a look here in a minute. We'll run a list and see what you have out there.
Oh, okay.
You've got the tracking information, which is pretty neat. And I don't know if you guys have looked much at the planner, but the new planner, but it's got this feature in there called tracking, which is when you're in the plan. Let's see if I can turn it on. It's got to be the plan's got to be active and locked. Let's save it. A little green light comes on if it's on track, if you've taken the course when you say you're going to take the course, and if everything is on track, then the term will be on track. And if the term, and it doesn't look like you have tracking turned on for everything yet, but if all the terms are on track, then the whole plan will be on track. So that's another neat little bit of data you can get out of here, is how many plans are on track, how many plans are not on track, how many classes are on track, that type of thing. So, once your reporting folks really get to know what's out there, there's a lot of good information there. That's exceptions. I don't want to talk about that. But let's see what other data we can get out of the plans tab real quick. Here's a tracking status. Let's not use. Let's just say this. I was doing it for one individual student, but let's just say where. So it looks like you've got, so as it pulling up different students, it's saying, if they're on track or not on track or not evaluated. So the key though is just to make sure you tie these things all together so that you can get what's in there. Let's look at our friend Melody here. What was it? Let's copy that whole thing. And we'll run it for her. So it looks like she's planned. So here's the description of the plan for that term. She's got, she planned a speech 100 and on down the line. Okay. The template, and I didn't put the templates in there. Let me check through with the schema. And by the way, there's a file in your, and I'll attach that real quick. Excuse me. The schema file that I go to quite a bit, and it shows all of the database tables and basically the schema of it. And
just let me ask you a question there, Dennis. So for talking about all those in our system, so delete plans who have graduated or are no longer attending, or do they keep them for the life of the?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. I honestly, I'd probably keep them. I mean, you're not taking up 27,000 plans as compared to 39 million gap result details. I wouldn't delete them.
Okay.
You could go through at some point in time and clean those out, but
okay. All right, thanks.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wanted to get to. I don't remember the name of the template. It's going to be called set template something. So set, and the template tables are set up very similar. You've got the set template mask, and then the notes and the tags and the terms. So let's just look at, let's do a count on set template mask. So oops. I know I didn't spell it right. And we don't need that. TMP. So let's just see how many templates you have out there. 21. So
so the templates would be specific to the old planner versus the new planner, right?
well, not necessarily. Let's take a look at what let's take a look and see. So they're more, what they are is just an overlay that you can put on so that they don't have to continually recreate a plan for a student.
Right.
And so it looks like they've got some old ones out here. And then I would recommend, if when they start using these, to not throw them out, just to go ahead and just update them. Let me
Right.
pull it up. What it is, it's a plan, but it's just like I said, you can use it as an overlay. So if you loaded this up for a particular student, then whatever their first term is, they would have nursing 107, nursing 109, nursing 081. So.
But I guess the question is, so if there were templates in the classic planner, does that carry over to the new planner?
That's what these got converted from the classic planner into here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And they're going to probably have to edit them a little bit. It said something about the scheme. These things are looking at a scheme, and what that is. It looks like I may not have access to. Oh, here we go. Okay, so you have to define the term scheme for templates, and what they mean by that is define what types of terms that is going to be in this plan. So like this first one here, 4 semesters, fall term start. So it's going to be a fall 1, spring 1, fall 2, spring 2. And then so think of that as how it's going to fill up these guys. That's fine. So this is now, so we've got fall 1, spring 1, fall 2, spring 2. Now you notice it's not tied to a specific fall semester, not tied to fall 2021 or anything like that. When you create so let's say we'll save this, and we'll just see if we can do that see if this will work. So if I create a new plan for Melody, I'm going to use a template. Funny, you have to make templates active, and I would bet this was the only one that's actually active right now. So I'm going to use that, and it's going to ask me, well, when do you want to start that thing? And so let's just say we started at fall of 2018. So that means it's going to do a term of fall of 2018, spring of 2019, fall of 19, spring of 20. Maybe let's start with 18. Let's see if that'll work for us. So it just took that overlay and put it on here. Now, instead of fall 1, it says fall 2018. That template's still out there. We just loaded it for this student. Now, and now we can move it around. We can do whatever we want to for the student. We don't have to keep it in this structure. If we wanted to add some terms, we could. If we could move classes around, we could do all that. Let's save it. There's the concept of active and not active. You really only want to have one active term out, one active plan out there. Let's save it. Oh.
Does that mean that when you create a new plan, the old ones are inactivated? Or do you have
Well,
to
no, and let's see. It depends on how you guys are set up. So I'm going to try to make this one active, and let's see what it tells me. It should tell us, okay, another plan is marked as already exists. If you click yes, the plan you're trying to save will be flagged as inactive. Okay, so there is a flag actually that does the opposite, that it'll set this one as active and turn the other one as not active. So we'll just go ahead and make that yes. So now you see it's inactive. Let's view our plan list. We need to go into the test one and we're going to manually just make it inactive. And then I want to run a report against it to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to click that as inactive, save it. And that's kind of a pain if you have it set this way. You have to go back and basically do it twice. And now turn around and set this one to active. And the reason you have it only one is active is otherwise your reporting, it could throw your reporting out of whack. If you have multiple active plans out there for a student and you ran that report that I just ran, it would tell us, it would maybe double up classes that you are reporting that you will eventually need. So let's go back to this one. We want to look at her individual plan. In fact, I'm going to take out the where's this and let's just look at all of them. And probably would look better if one of you guys ran this, but so here's the nursing classes, and you see the active plan is yes, and then here's the other plans classes are no. The other thing, and I'm not going to do, I just want to see the plan itself. So I'm just going to say, select the description and degree. I didn't want to do that. I just want to do the description and the is active. And I wanted to see the template. What's the template called? Template nest. Yeah. I don't think I typed that right. Set template mask ID. See if that runs now. GMTL. You guys didn't correct me on that. Okay, so we got two plans out there. One is the test plan. It's not active, and you see the template master is blank. And then we've got the other one that I just loaded. And and I don't know why people, if they would want to report on the number of templates or whether or not a plan was tied to a template or not, but the data's out there. But anyway, I think there's a lot of good information here, particularly if you're trying to look at scheduling. Now, Matthew, you had said you had done some reporting on your old plans. Just be aware. So your old plan tables were DAP, DAP. Well, it was DAP template mask was the template. like DAP plan, DAP. So you have a DAP res class detail. No, that's not right. That's not right. DAP. Here it is. Here it is. DAP plan course detail, and DAP planner detail, and DAP plan note detail. So do those tables look familiar to you, Matthew?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So unfortunately, they're going away. So those will now have to be converted to this new format. And just let you know, and I didn't realize this until this morning in a call with 504, these tables actually are no longer in the database either. So let's just look at DAP planner detail real quick. It should be a pretty should be pretty similar to what, although it'll be more than this because we only looked at the active plans. No, it's not 24,000. Does that make sense to you?
It's hard to say, but yeah, I guess.
Looks about
I
right.
actually would have thought it would be more, to be honest with you. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news, Matthew. Yeah, I mean that's I
Things
guess
change.
the way it is. Yeah, job security, right?
And I do tend to keep us employed.
So I believe that there's probably going to be some cleanup needed by the counselors because I think well, of course you probably know that in the classic planner, if a student changes their degree, sometimes the plan becomes detached.
Yes.
Or unhinged or something.
Yeah, unattached. Yeah.
That's why I suspect there's probably quite a few of those out there.
Yeah, and I think there's a script
to clean those up.
To get rid of those. Let me see what's out there. Well, maybe not. Find bad audits. I don't see anything on plans. But again, I don't think the plans is your problem. That table, either one of them. I mean, even with 24,000 here, and what was it, over 27,000 in the other one, that's not too bad. It's that 39 million that's going to be the kicker. Did that thing ever finish, by the way, Jeff?
No, it's still showing a status of cleanup. So, although if I look at the output, let's see, wait. The log shows 2 seceded. I mean, 2 audits seceded and 2 audits attempted. I mean, that matches to.
Yeah. Let's take a look. I'll stop sharing. Let's take a look at the database.
Okay.
Where's my share? Was it sharing all this time? Or no, there it is. Okay.
So yeah, so it's showing then.
Yeah. So go ahead and let's pull her up in SQL Developer. And
result.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay, so see the big difference now. Now there's only 7 records out there for her since we turned everything off.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
So now
Yeah.
I'm going to turn on, and if you'll get back into transit, I'm going to turn on a couple of those. I'm going to turn on the build classes applied. They'll fall through. Okay, so and this is for, okay, now go ahead and go through your CFG or your DAP 22 again in transit. You have to do that again.
Oh, oh.
DAP 22. We're all going to know your ID number, Melanie, by the time today is over with.
It's all good. We've been using Jose's forever, so it's nice to have a couple other guinea pigs.
Although.
And poor Amanda just doesn't have the coursework yet.
Oh, yeah. That's right. New academic, create new audit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Level undergrad. Registered.
Don't do a freeze.
Oh yeah, no freeze.
Yeah.
Audit output, no output.
And then check on that. Yeah. Okay. And this may be, I think we can go ahead and check do like your SQL here in a minute once it starts to clean up. So go ahead and go back over there to your SQL and run that again. So now we see, and I turned on a few of the flags, and this is more typical of what you would show. You know, so let's grab that, you know, maybe take a look at the fall class applied. So use the one at one of your pieces of code up there, I think has a class type. So, or result type, I'm sorry. So go up. Let's see what else you have there. And what we want to do is result type equal yeah, right there. You can just do that one. Instead of saying block credit CL needed, do fall class applied. And that'll be the classes that fell into fall through. Yeah. And that's kind of what her CPOS report was doing.
Oh, okay.
And so there's all the classes that fell into fall through. So that DAP free text gives you a nice little summary of the class. So Melody, when you're running you could run this now against your CPOS, and if you go out, Jeff, like DAP value 4, if you look over a little bit, you'll see that ECA value, and it's going to be either be ECA, and that'll show you what, you know, where you stand, whether that class is in the overflow or okay. It'll either say ECA you say overflow or okay. So,
Hmm.
okay.
Oh, okay.
So what you could do is use the same pop cell that you're running the CPOS
Right.
and load it into your DAP22 on Transit. Now that Web Transit is, you can do a PC ID file, an ID file on your PC, run it right through here, and then run that. So
Just made my day.
So for that,
made your
you would
day,
run it.
but I've screwed up Matthew's day, but I made your day. So,
Oh, I missed that. How did you screw up Matthew's day? I'm sorry. I had another meeting.
the plans changed. He's gonna have to
Oh.
rewrite his report.
Oh.
Okay, so here, this could be where that SQL goes, right?
You could put SQL there. You could do an ID file if you check that ID file box, and you could do student data, and it's some selection criteria. Oh, and I meant to tell you guys earlier, this is another change. And so one big fail I see here is it doesn't return how many students, like in your SQL or your selection criteria right here or anything. There's nowhere that says how many students it found. But that's changed in 504. I noticed in the release notes. 504 will come back with values here.
Of course it will. Of course it will.
Yeah. You guys need to get 504. Sounds like. So. And then 505. I don't know who knows what 505 will bring, but I think this was the first kind of rattle out of the box for Web Transit, and I think users, I know I certainly complain that, if I use the SQL, I don't know how many students I'm finding. I'm maybe finding 10,000 or maybe finding none. And so it's almost useless, but now that it's going to come back with the amount, then I'll use it.
Well, I got a feeling we're going to include Dennis on our next CPOS effort.
Yes, no offense to Crispino. Dennis, you are awesome. You run circles.
I won't sell him that. So.
Thank you. I just want to let you know, though, you're awesome.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Well, you guys are close. Sounds like with all that. So.
Yeah, I think we are, but then you never know.
Yeah.
Yep. One step forward, three steps back.
Yeah, and we ran into some issues with 502 response. Well, let's see, it was 502. We ran some issues with CPOS with another school, but then that was part of their setup too. I mean, they didn't use program codes, and so that made things. I mean, it didn't work. Basically, we had to stop the project. So, but
okay, good.
Okay. All right, so that's the schema file that you see that I showed you, and I'll send you. I'll make a note to send that to you. Although that's in your documentation that you probably downloaded from them. I use it all the time. I use that schema file, and like I said earlier, that advanced reporting guide is really pretty good. I mean, out of all of the Aleutian manuals, I'll probably use it more than any one. Just because a lot of times I don't remember all those tables and what the values are. So it's there for you.
All right. Very good.
Okay. Well, you guys kind of took to this reporting a lot better than a lot of schools do, because this is some complicated stuff, especially with that DAP 25 and the what DAP what. That throws everybody off right there. What is that DAP what?
It is confusing. It is confusing.
Yeah, I don't know why they ended up doing it that way, but then the SEP they ended up making it look good. And Melanie, I don't know if you saw all of the SEP tables, but they're much more what I would say what we're used to seeing in an SQL database. It's not all of this crazy everything dumped into one table like the CPA data is. Okay, let's talk about tomorrow then. I had kind of left tomorrow as a free-form day, Jeff. And so I know I heard you say earlier you want your folks to do some practicing. And so let's do that right off the bat. We'll get everybody to play around running some extracts.
Can we also, I don't know if we can try to tackle that issue I brought up earlier, where how we're loading the students. Because I know we didn't want to load everything, but we still keep running into issues where someone comes back that's been gone for a while and then they need their record loaded. Is there a way we can be doing that different to where we don't run into one or two of those a week?
Yes. And I think Jeff, we talked about it a little bit right away this morning, Melody, first thing. And I think we should do that. I think we should change that SQL file.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, I hate to change anything Patty Wong did because she is such a brilliant student person, but I think we ought to take it away and just use the default and see how that works.
Right.
Because I think what you're missing are those
That'd be great.
students with old G numbers.
That generates more work for us than anything else. And I know it's not a lot to do, Jeff, but it's just still one of those little nuisance things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so I think that another problem that I really want to look at tomorrow is why everyone is getting extracted every night.
Rehashed. Yeah.
Rehashed, right.
Yeah.
We'll look at it first thing in the morning again. We'll look at your RAD 30. And if it comes back again tomorrow, that'd be 3 days in a row. Everybody got rehashed. That's not, there's a problem there. And in the meantime, I'll see if I can find anything out in e-community if anybody's ever run into that issue before.
Okay. So do you want me to go ahead and change that SQL and try it?
You could try it. Jeff, what you could do is run that SQL to see how many students it would bring over. So
I think that was here. We were doing, where was it? Oh no, that was on the production. I mean, on the banner side.
Yeah, it's in banner.
Yeah, so this one here, for instance, is that same one.
That's what Patty. Let's see. Is that no? That's the new. That's the kind of the default version right there, right? Yeah.
So that's this one.
Yeah, run that and just see how many you get.
Yeah, this one I think comes like 7,600 or something. Yes, yeah, 7,665.
Uh-huh.
And this is just basically on the current term. So
that may still be. And now, tell us, Melody, what students are you getting coming back to you? Which are they?
There was just someone yesterday. And this one wasn't even because normally we find it's IDs that start like with G003. Because I think right now we're bringing them in if they start with 7 or higher, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, for instance, this one here.
But yeah, 752-888. I had that request to load yesterday, just yesterday.
Yeah. So this one's pulling in the 300s, and now that's going back before our time.
Yeah. But this one, I'm not sure. So, and do we know why? Like, for example, that 752-888, why that didn't load? I mean, it's a newer number.
Well, so the current SQL is a pulling in a range. So if we look at the current,
it's up. If you go up a little bit,
yeah,
right there.
Yeah, see, it's going from 767 up to 774, and it's pulling in those G numbers.
Then 752 still fell within that sequence, right? Oh no, that was before the 767. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but last night we figured out to run in multiple CPUs or multiple processes.
Mm-hmm.
So the process count went up to 6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So if we try to run this other SQL that grabs those 300s, like this one.
And I can look up that student and see
so if we look
they were already registered or what was going on. Just curious.
And this may be something we want to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, it would be a good topic just to, because I know that is one of the issues where advisors are constantly calling us saying like, why isn't this student is missing? They see it as something wrong with the system, where we understand why it's not including them, but for them, they see it as a flaw.
Yeah, because part of the problem we've had in the past was the time it took to run. And so now, there's these running thanks to Dennis's pointing that out. As before, is that there was only one. So now with six of these running, this runs a little faster. So now we can go back and maybe try that other sequel. And now that it's running faster, and then tomorrow we can see how that rehashing went.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's set it and try it.
Yeah, because this particular student that we loaded yesterday, they had been attending since summer 19 without a break, but for some reason they weren't in DegreeWorks until they were manually loaded yesterday. So
yeah, and that could be because there were some issues with the timing out. I mean, it was taking so long for it to run. I mean, that could have been part of that issue.
Jeff, would you look at that SQL again, though, that you're considering using? Is that going to pull up all we want, though? Because now, okay, so foster care, does that mean they're registered right there? Is that what that line 33?
Yeah, so this means that they're in Safari regs, is that right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So that would work. If that would mean they're registered.
And that's new? Or that was after we already had narrowed down the ID sequence?
This is new.
This is new. Okay. Because I was going to say, if that was the case, then that should have caught the student in question.
This is
okay.
I'd say it's new. This is the default. What Illusion gives you. You guys had created your own.
Got it. Okay.
So.
Yeah, and that was because it was taking so long for it to run. But now that it's running faster, so I think now is the time to try this and just see how it goes.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We can do that. So.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do that, and let's reconvene in the morning, and that's going to be where we're headed, and we'll try to work on those problems and anything else you guys can think of.
Okay. Sounds good.